got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the live tonight. This is the Cryptid Podcast, and with me tonight, I have a very special guest. I have Neoma Finn. Now, Neoma, if you don't know who she is a folklorist, a storyteller, and an author. Unfortunately, my co-host, Maggie, could not make it tonight. Her area of the country is without power right now. So, and just to let you guys know, I just ran up and downstairs really quick because I had to reset the modem. And I got back with like 7 seconds left. So you guys, thank you so much. Again, if you guys have had an encounter and would like to come on the show, or if you know someone who's had an encounter and you'd like to see him come on the show, please send me an email at thecryptidpodcast72@gmail.com. Again, thecryptidpodcast72@gmail.com. So tonight, you guys, we are going to dive into a lesser known cryptid called the Loveland Frogman. Now, these have been around for, well, since the 50s, I believe. And I'm going to read one story out of my book that happened, an encounter that happened in 2011. But I'm going to say it. She may not agree, but I'm going to say it. I'm going to let our expert dig into the history of the Loveland Frogman. So, without further ado, I just want to say thank you to everybody. Greasebag, great to see you, buddy. Sienna, I know I'm saying it wrong. God, I butcher your name so bad. I'm so sorry. Welcome. Ashes, thank you. Rasting, what's up? Corey, hello. Kristen, hello. Let's see, am I missing anybody? Neoma, hello. Life of Victorian Scott, welcome. Your name's not familiar to me, so first timer. If you are, let me know in the comments if this is your first live stream of the Cryptid Podcast. Steamboat, what's up, buddy? And Steamboat made a comment earlier. It was Iran. I know what just happened. I do not want to get into that. This is not a political forum. This is a fun forum about cryptids, both big and small, well-known and lesser known. Kirsten, hello. So without further ado, guys, let's go in and get into this. Never heard of frogmen. Well, here we go. So my book is from Monsters of the Midwest, and I'm going to read. Here we go. Now, it's the Loveland Frogman, Cincinnati, Ohio, spring of 2011. Candace caught sight of the green poster on the one with the frog out of the corner of her eyes. She read it, stopping her boyfriend, whose hand she was holding, abruptly beside her. "It's the Loveland Frogs," she read out loud. "They've gone and made a musical about them." "Who made a musical? About what?" her boyfriend asked. "The guys who wrote our favorite play from the Fringe Festival," she said. "Do you remember?" "Oh, of course," he answered. "Who doesn't love a good spoof of Ghostbusters?" Her favorite show from the 2012 Cincinnati Fringe Festival had been Don't Cross the Streams, the Cease and Desist musical by Mike Hall and Joshua Steele. "But what's a Loveland frog?" he asked. Candace laughed. "I've always forgot you didn't grow up around here." She led her boyfriend to a nearby bench and pulled her smartphone from her purse. "Well, let me tell you about the legend of the Loveland Frogs." She clicked through the phone and brought up the stories. "Back in 1955, she said, a businessman was driving late one night and saw 3 of the creatures." "Seriously?" It even gets better. One of them held a wand and shot a spray of sparks. Now her boyfriend laughed. "There's more," Candace said. "The next 2 sightings were in 72 by some cops." Her boyfriend sat back the bench and listened, and then 2 weeks later, another officer saw him. He shot, and she goes, "Oh, but it says that Matthew later recanted his story." So I'm thinking that's one of the cops. Her boyfriend nodded. If anyone can turn all of that into a good show, it'll be those guys. He studied the details on the poster behind them, and then he pulled his phone from his pocket. "I'm getting a ticket for that show for sure, on opening night even. There's no way we can miss that one." So apparently, it looks like they made a musical. Pork chops and applesauce is in the house. Chavez is in the house. Teresa's in the house. And Ray is up to his old tricks again, guys. He's just given out 5 memberships. Thank you very much, Ray. Appreciate that, buddy. And Wade's in the house. All right. So, you guys, if you guys really want to know more about the Loveland Frogs, again, I know she's not going to agree with me on this, but I'm turning the reins over to our expert here. She has got some really good detail about those encounters from 55 and 72. And she'll go ahead and get into more detail with that, and then she'll even treat us to some other cryptids, and other encounters that she has, as well as I have. Like I said, I got a couple of books here that I'll read from, and hopefully we can keep you guys entertained for an hour or two. But after that, let's go. Neoma.
All right. Well, the main encounters, the most famous encounters, were the ones with the 2 police officers in 1972. At about 1 o'clock in the morning, police officer Ray Shockey happened to be driving along close to the Miami River on a highway. He looked over and he saw what he thought was, he saw an animal crossing the road in front of him. And it didn't look like anything that he had ever seen before. And so, of course, he slows down and he's trying to look at it and get a good idea of what it is. And it was kind of hunched over at this point. And then when he got really close and it got actually in the beam of his headlight, it stood up and it jumped over the guardrail and down the embankment ran down the embankment towards the little Miami River. And this was at 1 o'clock in the morning, March 3rd, 1972. He didn't, other than just that one side of it, he really didn't get a good image of it, but he did go back to the police station and he told his fellow officers, "Look, I saw this crazy thing, whatever, whatever you want to think, but this is what I saw. I don't know. What do you guys think?" Well, of course, he kind of became the joke of the police station for a couple of weeks until Officer Mark Matthews happened to be out right around the same area. And I think his was more early in the morning, like maybe 3 in the morning. And sure enough, what he saw was what he thought was roadkill. So he pulls over thinking that he's going to not, push the roadkill off the side of the road. But as he got out of his car, this thing stood up and it was 4 feet tall and it kind of looked sort of like a frog, which is kind of what Ray Shockey had described as about 4 feet tall, kind of looked like a frog, but it walked on 2 legs. And this thing jumped over the guardrail, but this time, because Matthews was actually out of his car, he was able to draw his gun and shoot at it. Now, this is where things get, depending on whose account you read. The one that I know originally was that Matthews shot and killed this thing and put it in the trunk of his car and took it back to the police station. Other encounters say that he fired at it, but he missed it. And later, there was a book written, I believe, right around 2015, where a man was able to interview him. And he said, really, he was just trying to make his friend Ray Shockey not look so crazy. But what I originally knew was that he had shot and killed this thing, and he took it back to the police station. Ray Shockey happened to be there. He brought him outside. He said, "I want you to look at this thing, and what do you think?" And so he opens the trunk, and they look at it. And Ray Shockey says, "Yes, that's what I saw." Well, the more they looked at it, the more they realized what they were looking at was an iguana. And so they decided that the Loveland frog was really just somebody had an iguana. It got too big. They set it free and it's running around in the Little Miami River bottoms. There are certain things about that that don't make sense. First, if it was an iguana, there have been sightings all the way up until the most recent one I know of is in 2016. And that was a couple of kids were out along the Little Miami River, and they actually got a photograph of it. Although, admittedly, the photograph of the frog that they took the picture of kind of looks like Kermit the Frog with 2 flashlights for eyes. But that is their most recent one that I know of, is 2016. So from 1972 to 2016 is what, 44 years? Iguanas tend to only live for 10 to 20 years. And both encounters, Ray Shockey's happened on March 3rd, and Mark Matthews' encounter happened 2 weeks later. So we're saying March 17th, maybe. The weather was cold. When Ray Shockey saw his, it was in fact cold enough outside that the roads were icy. And iguanas are lizards, and they are not even indigenous to that area. They're South American and Central American and Mexican lizards, and they require heat like any other reptile. And there's no way they would have been jumping up and moving that quickly at that time of year with the temperatures being that cold. Now, of course, there is the 1955 encounter, and that was a businessman. Some people say he was a traveling salesman. I never knew his name until just recently, and I'm going to look at my notes real quick because I had always been told that his name sort of just disappeared into the atmosphere, that he was just sort of forgotten. But I just recently learned that the man's name is not popping up on my, that's so irritating. I know why his name isn't on there, because I'm used to telling this story and I didn't make a note about him because I thought I don't need to write that down. I remember this stuff, which is really scary because I never remember anything anymore. But he happened to be driving along. He was crossing a bridge going over the Little Miami River. And as he came up on the bridge at the opposite end, he saw 3 or 4, about 3 or 4 foot tall beings standing at like they look like children or little people. And they were standing at the opposite end of the bridge. And of course, he sort of takes his foot off the accelerator and just sort of lets the car roll forward as he's concentrating on these people. And he's thinking, the closer he's getting to them, the more he's realizing these things are green. These things have heads sort of like frogs. They don't look like human beings. Everything's going through his mind that you can imagine. Am I looking at aliens? What in the heck is this? And then one actually pulls out a wand and it shoots. It just does one of these things and sparks fly out of the wand. Well, right away, he throws the car into reverse and he backs away and he gets away from him. But, and, you know, he, of course, told people. And when you tell people strange things like that, sadly, people make fun of you. And that's what happened. But the interesting thing, the thing that most people are not aware of, is that way back when Europeans first came to this continent, France owned most of the Ohio River Valley. And there were a lot of fur trappers, French fur trappers. Boy, that's a mouthful. Who came to that area, and they would go in, you know, they would, they'd be gone for, I don't know, you know, months at a time. And when they would come out, they would tell these stories. And many times they would tell stories about these frog people along the river. And when they would tell, of course, they communicated quite frequently with the indigenous people. And so those were often the first people who heard their stories, and they would ask them about them. And the Miami people would tell them, oh, yes, those are Janosquas. And Janosquas are river demons. That's what that means, demons of the river. and they're very dangerous. Don't get near them. They'll steal your horse. They'll steal any livestock you've got, and they'll eat it. And sometimes they'll even steal you and eat you. And so even though this seems like a 20th century cryptid, it seems sort of, almost like it was made by, for a 1950s sci-fi movie. The truth of the matter is the Loveland frogs go all the way back to before Europeans even came to this country. And then the other thing is, if you go downstream about 200 miles, maybe a little more, a little less, I don't know for sure, but let's say around 200 miles, there is a town called Stevensport, Kentucky. They have a legend there of a lizard man that comes up out of the river. Now, the difference between the lizard man in Stevensport, Kentucky, and the frogman of Loveland is the fact that the lizard man's usually identified as being about 6 feet tall and looking more lizard than frog. But the oddest part about it all is that if you split the difference between Loveland and Stevensport, you'll find a little town, and I have to look up my notes because I did write this down, I know for sure. It's in Indiana, and it's called Vevay, Vevay, Indiana. And beginning in the 1830s, I believe, they started telling the story of mud mermaids. Mud mermaids, they're not really mermaids in the way that we would think of mermaids. I'm going to, in 1894, the Cincinnati Enquirer wrote a description, and I'm just going to read that directly to you. This is how they were described in the Cincinnati Enquirer in 1894. The beast is about 5 feet in length. Its general color is yellowish. The body between the 4 legs resembles that of a human being. Back of the hind legs, it tapers to a point. The extremities resemble hands and are webbed and furnished with sharp claws. It is devoid of hair. Its ears are sharp pointed and stand like those of a dog. And those encounters went on through I don't think there's been a 20th century encounter of a mud mermaid, but those encounters did occur rather frequently throughout the 1800s. And I think it's interesting that if you start in Loveland and work your way west and get to Stevensport, there seems to be quite a few lizard or frog-like, amphibian or lizard-like encounters in that area along the Ohio River and its tributaries. Little Miami River is actually a tributary of Ohio.
Let me ask you this. So you and I, when because you were on my show last week, and yours is going to be released in July, your episode.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this. You had mentioned that there are stories up and down the Ohio River Valley.
Yes.
And other than the mud mermaid, or the lizard man or the Loveland frogman, what other folklore, what other cryptids or stories do you happen to have right around that area?
Well, I do have one that is actually in Ohio. It's a little farther north from there. But I suppose because it's in Ohio, it still kind of counts. We're all familiar with the legend of Boggy Creek, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the name of the movie. As you know, the actual monster is called the Fouke monster.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of people don't realize this. There really is a Boggy Creek monster. It just happens to live in Ohio.
Really?
And yeah. Back in I think it was like 1947 or 48, the government decided to cordon off a certain amount of land, and it was a natural marshland, and it was the first nature preserve in Ohio. And they wanted to preserve it for the ducks and the geese and whatever. and it was very marshy and very swampy land. And so they did. And the people, of course, were really excited that they had this. They were the first to have this nature preserve, and it was in their area, and they made a big deal about it, and they celebrated it quite a bit until one day a guy was driving down the road, kind of going around this particular nature preserve, and something crossed the road in front of him like he'd never seen before in his life. And it was tall, and it was bipedal, and it was hair covered. And he had never seen anything in his life at all like this thing. And he thought, holy cow, I don't know what I'm looking at. But of course, he goes back to town and tells people about it. And it wasn't long after that it seemed like all of these roads that went around this particular swamp area, people were seeing this thing crossing the road. Then there was a group of Boy Scouts who were doing their camp out, thing that Boy Scouts do where they get certain badges. Mm-hmm. And they had gone there to camp out, and they were there. I don't know. They were supposed to be there for, 2 or 3 nights. And somebody went to check on them, and they were all gone.
Really?
Yeah. The government made a lot of, excuses. Somebody came in and, serial killer or whatever. And, there were a lot of different reasons for what happened. But nobody could really explain why the government came in and built a great big fence around that area either. And they did.
So I have a very interesting comment here from Kristen. She's one of my loyal listeners. I don't care what you call it, Falk Monster or the Boggy Creek Monster. It's not a Bigfoot. That's not the first time I've heard that.
Yeah.
That's not the first time I've heard that. And let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think it falls under?
Bigfoot. I disagree with Kristen.
Okay.
I know the point she's trying to make, and I could be wrong. I mean, I don't know because I don't know Kristen. And I've been told that many times in my life, don't call this and this and this. Don't call a skunk ape a Bigfoot. Don't call, Bigfoot is this particular thing. But I personally do believe that just like there are chimpanzees and bonobo chimpanzees and gorillas, and they're all great apes.
Yeah.
And so I think my definition of Bigfoot is to cover Bigfoot is the umbrella under which I put all of those things. And I'm not going to throw a temper tantrum and say Kristen is wrong because, until we have species, until we have bodies, until we have, samples and things like that, we'll never truly know. But that's my opinion. And so we're all entitled to that. And that's mine.
Kristen has mentioned literally, other than Bigfoot, she has mentioned like my favorite cryptid in the Kushtaka. Now, because of my dad living up in Alaska pretty much his entire life before he joined the military. Hey White, what's up, buddy? I laughed so hard. Hey Carson, how's it going? I laughed so hard when my dad told me about the Kushtaka. Now, I have never put the Kushtaka and Bigfoot in the same category other than them being cryptids. Now, I am dying to get someone on who's had a Kushtaka encounter. That a Yowie, those are two of my are like my bucket list to interview someone who's had. Hey, Daryl, what's up, buddy? Daryl Adams in the house. But those are two of my bucket list interviews to have, is just someone who's had a Kushtaka encounter and has had a Yowie encounter. Now, I only know about the Kushtaka because my dad told me about it,
Mhm.
and he never talked about it again. He told me one time, and he never told me about it again. So, again, I'm always on the hunt for someone who's had a Kushtaka. And again, the Kushtaka is the otter man. That's what he is.
Yeah.
He's an otter man. And when I first thought about it, and then I asked Fred Rolls from Alaska, that I said, well, what kind of otter are we talking about? Are we talking about a river otter, or are we talking about a sea otter? Like the cute little furry ones that lay on their back and they lock arms so they don't drift apart and
That
they crack.
everybody loves to death.
Yeah. And he goes, that's the very one I'm talking about. And I'm like, whew. So I definitely want to try to get someone who's had a Kush. Now, I've had a couple of people email me of them, and their stories are, I like them, but I kind of don't like the tone that's with them, so I haven't read them. But other than that, I mean, the Falk Monster is reported to have 3 toes,
Mm-hmm.
a 3-toed print. So, again, I don't know, and it doesn't look like a foot. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
From what I understand,
The print that you saw in the movie actually looks more like almost like a bird or a lizard print.
Yeah.
But to be fair, the man whose field that print was taken from, he argued years later, that the print that he saw in his field actually did have 5 toes, and that they made it a 3-toe thing for the benefit of the movie. That said, if you go into the I can't remember what that truck's, it's like a gas station convenience store there in Falk. I believe there are 3-toed castings that they display there, and they have a little museum in the corner of the whole thing.
Oh, that's cool.
So,
see, White just named the Gugway.
Yeah.
And I'd like to hear, do you have anything on the Gugway? And he says it's called Monster Mart.
Thank you. Yes, Monster Mart. I think the Gugway is, to me, the one that fascinates me the most. It is, there's a book called Them versus Us. It's written by Danny Vendra. Oh gosh, I can't think his last Vendramini. I can't think of his last name. And like I said, names that we were talking before the show. My kids' names are Hey and You because I can never remember their names, and I'm the one that gave it to them. So, but he wrote this book called Them versus Us, and it's a discussion about Neanderthals and where they fall in history and things like that. And I am not a fan of the book itself because he uses a lot of his logic. He leaves a lot of information out to make his story acceptable, and that's not cool to me. That's what causes a lot of the problems that we experience in this world, is when we don't give all of the information, or we base our beliefs on only half of the information. That said, and his name is Danny Vendramini.
Okay.
That's the book. But that said, this image right there,
Yep.
I'm going to lose it when I get too close to the camera because I'll be out of the light, is, for those who have seen a Gugway, they say that it looks very, very much like this. Now, There's another image called, I don't know if you know the story of the Beast of Seven Shoots,
I
but there
don't.
was, okay, this man was out in the wilderness and he happened to be taking pictures, and I don't even know why, but there's a set of waterfalls or something called Seven Shoots, Chutes. And he captured an image, not realizing it until after he went back and I think developed the photos. I believe it was on a roll of film. An image of a creature standing on the hillside, and it's got like a pig under its arm, or maybe some people think it might be a dog. And that animal is what most people say a Gugway looks like. It looks nothing like the picture that I showed you from that book.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know which is true, but I will tell you this. I live in Middle Tennessee. I live right along the Tennessee-Kentucky state line. And I know a lady who, and I'm not going to tell you her name. She's well known, but I'm not going to tell you her name because when she showed me the picture, it was in confidence, and that's why I won't bring the picture up and show you, but I will tell you this. It looked exactly like the Beast of Seven Shoots, and it was taken not very far from my house.
So this lady actually has a photograph
Yes.
of what you believe is a Gugway.
Yes, taken not very far from my house.
Man. Now, some people are saying, I've heard it a couple times, Gugway is a descendant of the baboon family.
It does. A lot of people do say it has that very baboon looking or a mandrill type face.
Yeah, that's no. There's a movie. I want to say, and it's like an 80s movie. I think it's Tales from the Crypt. And there's like this box, it's underneath the stairs, and this family lives in this house or whatever. And there is a monster inside this box, and it like eats people. But it looked like a mandrill to me. The snout of it and everything. And that mandrills are absolutely terrifying. If you guys have ever seen a mandrill, but from what I understand, mandrills are super chill.
Yeah.
They just look absolutely vicious. Baboons and chimpanzees are way more aggressive than mandrills, from what I understand. You know,
chimpanzees, I think, are the cutest ones, and yet they're the most dangerous of the group because they have such a volatile personality.
They do. Absolutely.
And, I think I think what makes the mandrill look so freaking scary is its war paint.
Yeah, the blue and the red, and
yeah.
Was it Freak Show, Chavez? Was it Freak Show? I don't know if it was Freak Show, honestly. I think it was sorry about that, guys. I think it was Tales from the Crypt. In the same movie or whatever. It was like he had a guy who was a neat freak, and he lived in this glass case sort of thing, and everything was like sterile, and he was afraid of everything, but he's super rude to people that were helping him and stuff, like his assistants. And then one day he was like washing his face or something, and all these cockroaches and everything started coming out of the drain and stuff, and I just started freaking out. So but you guys, we're not only going to talk, I know the title of it is the Loveland Frogman, and there's not really a ton of stuff on there.
No, it's really not.
It's one of the lesser, I want to say one of the lesser documented frogmen. I wonder if more people have seen that in that area,
There have been quite a few over the years. Thank you. I was trying to get into, thank you, Steamboat. I was trying to let Ray know, yes, it's the bonobo that you're probably thinking of. It looks exactly like the chimpanzee. It's slightly smaller, and it has quite a different personality from the chimpanzee. It's not nearly as...
well, the bonobo, they are known as the lion killers. And
that's a different one. That's a different one altogether. Yes. There's... the third chimpanzee is the lion killer. I think it's only recently been discovered. The bonobos, or bonobos as I call them, and I don't know which it is, but the they're famous for being promiscuous.
Oh, okay. Well,
They liked it. Like they're if you take your kids to the zoo and they say, "Mommy, what's that monkey doing?" It's probably a bonobo
oh,
doing it.
nice.
So yeah. But the and I wanted to say something about the Loveland frog, and I saw that and I wanted to get it in, and of course I went blank now. I hate my brain. It used to not be this way. It used to be
Oh, the
smart.
Billy, the Billi.
Yeah, Billy Ape. That's
Bill,
it.
yeah, I think they're like 6 feet tall.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That's
you guys.
supposed to be what the Michael Crichton's Congo.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be what he based those on, is the legend of the Billy Ape. So
This is very interesting. Okay, Kristen, now true, because here's the thing. Now, I don't know. I'm going to try to see if I can get what episode it is from Josh, but Josh had a gentleman on when he was 12 years old. He was out hunting and he saw what he thought was a fox. And so he was going to go and shoot this fox. But right before he pulled the trigger, he heard "don't." And then after he shot, he heard his head, "shoot me." And this thing comes out from, the trees or whatever that was in front of him.
yeah.
And he's literally having this conversation with this thing. And what it turned out to be was a Dogman. And
Wow.
the Dogman, he goes, "Why did you shoot me?" And he goes, "Because you scared me." That's this as a kid. He goes, "Because you scared me." And he goes, "Well, that's what I like to do. I like to scare you." And he goes, so he, went about his business. I don't know if the Dogman walked away or ran or whatever. But later in life, the guest kept saying, "I would run into this thing. Like legit, I would run it. I would see it, and it followed me throughout my life." And he goes, "And
Wow.
one day I was driving down the road, and I hear this noise, and I look over, and here's this Dogman running alongside my car, and it says, when I get the chance, when I'm given the okay, I'm gonna kill you first." And that's what this thing said to him. Yes, I have seen a hairless bonobo or bonobo, a bonobo, whatever you want to say. Yeah, I have. That's pretty freaky because they're jacked. They are absolutely jacked. But yeah, this Bilby or Billy, sorry, the Billy chimps are. It's crazy. They say they are the force of the Democratic Republic of Congo. They're to be larger and more aggressive than typical chimpanzees, and they have a reputation for killing lions. Now imagine a cryptid with that temperament,
Yeah.
and that's all they want to do. That's crazy. But you guys, what I want to do here is I actually want to get into some pretty cool. I haven't read a lot of stuff on it, and this is in this book, Beware of the Woods, Part 2. I actually have a story that's fascinated me, for the simple fact that my dad was a Vietnam vet, and my stepdad was a Vietnam vet. And if anybody knows where I'm going with this, this is rock apes in Vietnam. Now, I have a pretty good friend of mine, and he is hey, what's up there, Tony? He is a MACSOG V veteran. And if you guys don't know what MACSOG V are, they don't exist. For 20 years after the Vietnam War, they did not exist. Their exploits, what they call beyond the fence or over the fence, did not exist. And I'm going to shoot him an email to see if he may have heard anything while he was out on his missions, or other than the North Vietnamese, or actually saw anything. And I'm going to ask him. And there's a couple people I can ask, but this book has a story, and the eyewitness's name is Rich W. And the location of the sighting was Doc To or Doc 2 region of Vietnam. It was about November of 1967. Rick states, I never wanted to be a soldier. I had all intentions of following my dad's footsteps and join the family appliance repair business. But when the war kicked off, my dad told me I owed it to my country. He was a World War II vet and not the kind of guy that you argued with. So I ended up becoming a soldier after all. I was just a kid, barely a year out of high school, with no real idea what I was really getting myself into. But there I was in Dak To, swatting mosquitoes, trudging through the jungle. It was a dry season, but still felt humid to me. A kid who grew up in Arizona, the temps weren't awful in November, maybe even pleasant if it wasn't for, the damned war. I don't want to rehash war stories, though. I had no doubt you want to hear them. I just want to tell you about the day I saw something that blew my mind. It was early November, not long after the Battle of Dak To or Dak To had kicked off. Our mission that day was supposed to be simple, or so they told us. We were to patrol the area and gather intelligence, hopefully staying out of any firefights. The terrain, man, I can still remember it. It was so damn rugged, practically untouched jungle. There were no paths, no trails. You had to hack your way through the vegetation. It was exhausting. Sweat saturated my uniform, making it stick to my skin like cling wrap. And my boots, they felt like they were encased in concrete. The first sign that something was off came as a rumble. We all froze on high alert. It sounded like an explosion, but we couldn't be sure. Our sergeant, a real bastard, but a man who'd seen more combat than any of us could imagine, raised his hand, signaling us to take cover. We crouched down, hiding in the weeds and plants, straining to listen, trying to figure out what brand of hell was coming for us. Then came another explosion, and then a second. Later, gunfire. What the hell's going on over there? One of my buddies whispered. Sarge didn't answer. No surprise. Instead, he motioned us to follow him, and we moved towards what was now obviously a battle. Our M16s were at the ready. I smelled the gunpowder before I saw anything. This thick smoke hung in the air. The jungle seemed to shake, reverberate with every gunshot and explosion. We were walking straight into a gunfight with enemy troops. Another 50 yards, and we were in the thick of it. About 20 of my fellow Americans trading rounds after round with those a-holes, but the effers were dug in. I couldn't get a count on these guys, but let's see, hold on. But there were less of them than us. I figured we could take them. But before we could join in, something truly bizarre went down. 5 hairy creatures emerged from the jungle, appearing in between the two sides. They were about 6 feet tall and maybe a little under a cover of thick matted hair. They looked like oversized apes, but these were no ordinary monkeys. Aside from their size were their eyes. They were thinking angry eyes. What the heck were those things? I muttered to myself. Sarge shook his head, his eyes never leaving the strange creatures as he aimed his rifle at them. The monkeys seemed to be unfazed by the battle going on around them. The bad guys noticed them too, and the fighting seemed to go on pause. The VC were trading confused looks with each other and seemed to be scared as well as I was. I think one of our guys shot first, but I don't know for sure. A hail of bullets sent dirt and leaves flying, and the apes bellowed in guttural cries of pain as a few of them were wounded. The apes hunched down, taking cover behind trees and rocks. It was like they understood war and survival. As I watched the other guys tuck tail and run, I never saw what happened before or after, not even in the fiercest battle. But any happiness I felt over their retreat was short lived, as a stone the size of a bowling ball came flying through the air and hit the ground near our position. It was thrown by one of those apes. We were soldiers. We were trained to fight, but we were trained to fight men, not these things. Then all of the apes began chucking rocks at us. It was like it was a hailstorm, but these hailstones were big enough to kill you. Desperate and scared, half to death, I fumbled to retrieve a grenade from my belt. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely hold the pin, but I did. I pulled it and lobbed it in the direction of the nearest ape. It hit the ground just a few feet from the creature, coming to a stop within arm's reach of it. But before it could explode, this ape reached out with its long hairy arms and snatched up the grenade. With as much dexterity as any man I've ever seen, it hurled the grenade back in our direction. "Get down!" Sarge shouted. We dove for cover just as the grenade exploded nearby. Shrapnel rained down on us, and the force of the blast knocked me on my butt and left my ears ringing and my head spinning. I crawled to my sergeant's side. He was bleeding from a huge gash on his forehead. Blood painted his face red, but he wasn't an easy man to stop. He aimed his M16 at the apes, sent one of them to the ground. His toughness, his calmness, I don't know what word to use, but he inspired the rest of us to get our crap together and start fighting back. We all began firing at the apes, and just seconds later, the creatures retreated. Two of them grabbed the one Sarge hit and dragged it back into the jungle. A minute later, there was no sign of them. There wasn't much time to think about what had happened. We had to give chase to the VC who had gone on and took off. And we did. But like I said before, I don't want to relish in war stories, so I'll just finish it here. There's always a follow-up with the author with these, and the author asks, after you contacted me, I did some research on Sasquatch-like creatures, and I found numerous reports of primates called rock apes. And the witness, Rich, he replies, "Well, that seems fitting, all things considered, doesn't it? You said that they were about 6 feet tall. Did they have any other distinctive features?" Their arms reminded me of orangutans. They were so long and allowed them to really whip those rocks at us. I mean, these things had arms like NFL quarterbacks. You wouldn't want to believe the size of the rocks they were throwing. And as they did, it was easy like they were me tossing a pebble. I never saw anything like it. And how was their build? The author asked. They were sturdy looking and muscular, but they also had big bellies. Maybe thinking about it, they kind of look like bear bellies. What about their facial features? Their face was very round and hairless. The skin on their face was dark brown, about the color of dark chocolate. Their noses were broad and flat. They had deep-set eyes and a bulky, thick brow ridge. They looked prehistoric. So like cavemen. No, more primitive, a couple of steps back into the evolution chart you always see in pictures. But heck, maybe they were just the missing link or something. I don't really know. Did the apes make any sounds, grunts or howls, maybe? This was going to sound weird, but they sort of barked like dogs. Did you ever see them again while in Vietnam? I didn't, but some other guys sure did. So it wasn't exactly a rare occurrence. Not where we were anyway. Everyone in our platoon talked about them, and some of the villagers did too. So I've always been fascinated about finding things on or about the rock apes in Vietnam. Um, I've heard a couple of things on other podcasts where they briefly touched on rock apes, but this is the first story that I saw that kind of went into detail. So,
I've actually, yes, I'm answering Kristen in that. Yes, I have heard of rock apes. I actually, whenever somebody mentions rock apes, I get sidetracked onto Janosqua, which is not a rock ape, but a bigger, scarier version of a Bigfoot here in the United States or North America. Of course, I've had people tell me stories about the rock apes in Vietnam. I knew a guy from Vietnam who was a Vietnam era vet who was a tunnel rat. And anybody who doesn't know what a tunnel rat was, they tended to always be smaller men. And their job was to go into the tunnels and fight guerrilla warfare with the Viet Cong. And this man suffered, as most tunnel rats do, with a lot of post-war psychosis. And I can remember him telling me something about everybody has known since I was a kid that this is my topic, and him trying to tell me about that. And at the time, I just thought he was crazy. Well, frankly, he was. But, what he had been through in Vietnam, I could certainly understand it. But when he was trying to tell me about this thing in Vietnam, I thought he had just confused stories. And that's the only person I've ever known that I've ever known personally who had a story. And unfortunately, I dismissed it. I was 19, 20 at the time.
Yeah, that's what my dad did in Vietnam. He was a tunnel rat.
Yeah.
So my dad was all of 5'7",
Yeah.
and scrawny, maybe weighed 125 pounds, if that. But yeah, he went in there and did his thing. He didn't really talk about it much. So
No, you can't get tunnel rats to talk about it much because that was some pretty awful stuff that they put those men through.
yeah.
But I do know quite a bit about Janosquas.
Well, let's hear about it.
Well, that is an Iroquois legend. And a Janosqua they describe them as the bigger, scarier cousin to Bigfoot. Scientifically, you would say that it would be a subspecies. What makes them so unique is the fact that they tend to roll in the mud and the dirt to collect rocks and dirt and to mat themselves, presumably so that when the Native Americans would shoot at them with their bows and arrows, it wouldn't penetrate. And they exhibit very, very, very aggressive behavior. And a favorite thing for them to do is to twist the heads off their victims.
Mm-hmm.
And that reminds me of a story I once heard of a man in Colorado who he was he was somebody that there's a word for people who take people out hunting. He was like a guide.
Mm-hmm.
And he had taken this man out to a certain valley up in the mountains in Colorado. And there was a long meadow separating the two ends. And he had put the man way at this end. He'd set him up. He'd made sure he had all his ammunition. He said, basically, I'm going to go to the other end and I'm going to chase the elk in your direction. It'll just be like shooting fish in a barrel. And so he heads and he gets all the way to the other end of the meadow. And just as he gets to the other end of the meadow, he starts hearing the guy shooting and he's screaming. And he looks back and this man's running across this meadow at him, and he actually sees something chasing him. And so he starts running towards the man, and he gets nowhere near him, but close enough that he can see what's going on. And the thing behind him caught up with him and twisted his head off.
And he saw it.
And he went to the park rangers, the Colorado Fish and Wildlife people, and they sent a crew up there to investigate. And I believe they found the body, but it went down in the record book as a hunting accident. Man tripped and twisted his own head off.
Yep.
Now that is. I've done it several times.
Oh, that's bananas.
Yeah.
Seriously, a hunting accident. Okay.
Mm.
All right.
It was a hunting accident or something like that. I don't remember what it was, but they wrote it off, and they didn't seem to want to investigate once they saw what had happened to the man. It was like they knew and they were done. They didn't want to talk about it anymore. So,
well, I don't understand why park rangers, I mean, they come up with, come up to something that's going to be just maybe a little more believable.
Yeah.
A bear attack or something like that. You know, again, it's so outside of the realm of things that a bear is going to twist somebody's head off. But I mean, how do you explain a hunting accident and the dude has no head and there's obvious signs that it was twisted off?
I told you the story about the Monroe County livestock killings, right? Up in Kentucky.
Mm-mm. You mentioned it, but you never told me.
Well, so here's the story. There was in Monroe County, Kentucky, which is actually not too far from me also. I think it was 3 miniature horses and 2 dogs. And the guy found them in he goes out to his, to the pasture, and they're all dead. And they all, like they had their throats ripped out. And so, of course, he calls the police, and, the sheriff comes out and does an investigation. And the sheriff says, this is some kind of a big animal. The sheriff suggested maybe that it was a big cat. But whatever it was definitely an animal attack. There was claw marks. There was clearly there was no evidence. There was no human footprints. There was no tire tracks, nothing like that left behind. There was simply what appeared to be a massive animal attack. And there was one print, and it did look very much like a big cat print, except for I searched and searched and searched last week to try to find that picture again. A lot of things, when you find a story, download it, print it, whatever you got to do, because if it gets to be known on the internet, it will disappear. Mm-hmm. And that footprint has disappeared. But what I remember seeing that struck me was that the claws were not retracted. Cats retract their claws.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, so the reason I'm telling this story is because the sheriff came and he determined that the story, that it must have been a big cat. The Kentucky Fish and Wildlife came and they said, no, this is clearly a human attack. You can see the knife marks, and this is definitely a human being came and cut these animals with knives. And the sheriff, he just said, absolutely not. I refuse to believe that. And it became this big battle. You can look it up. There's actually multiple television articles, or the news did several stories on it. There's newspaper articles. The sheriff flat out refused. He would not accept that these animals were killed by a human being. There were no tire tracks. There were no human footprints. There was no human DNA. There was nothing whatsoever. And he stood his ground. And this was like in August or September. In November, more animals were killed. Same way, had their throats ripped out. Same area, not too far from the original farm. And animals continued. And the sheriff's like, you need to keep your kids in the house because I don't know what this thing is, but it isn't a person. And the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife said, oh no, you're wrong. That was done with a knife. And the sheriff said, I've been a hunter my whole life. I know what a knife mark looks like. And there's nothing. And, he'd been a sheriff for years. And he says, I know what a knife mark looks like. And these are not knife marks. These are claw marks. These are teeth marks. These are bite marks.
Yeah.
And to this day, it has never been settled. The sheriff will not call it a human attack. And the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife refused to believe it was anything but human.
I don't again, I don't understand this. I mean, I can understand certain things. Like you have these big logging companies that have these huge tracts of forest that they log, and then for every one tree they take, they plant two to four trees in its place. A Weyerhaeuser in the Pacific Northwest is huge. And I can understand why they would not want anything like this to go out and be known, because it'd be bad for business,
Yeah.
But then again, you have people like us, you and I, and the people that are in the chat and guests that I've had on my show that are screaming from the mountaintops, you guys, you need to let people know that you have these over aggressive apex predators in this area.
Right.
And they're not just your dumb animal that's going to randomly wander into a campsite. They're going to stalk you, they're going to watch you, and they're going to nail you when the opportunity arises to them. So,
Hey, I live an hour and a half, I think. I'm going to say an hour and a half from the land between the lakes.
Yeah.
I can tell you story after story about the land between the lakes. I'm sure Martin Groves can tell you story after story about the land between the lakes. So can Barton Nunley.
Daryl Denton.
It would help so much if they would just admit that there's something there killing people, but they'll never do it. They'd rather not.
Well, I'm going to tell you guys really quick here. Now, I don't know how many of you had a chance to hear any of Martin Groves' stories. And if you haven't, you guys get on Amazon, buy his books. I heard, and he had done a podcast, and I'd heard where he was talking about they were going in, and this is when he was a police officer. And he saw a bow hunter that was like going into the woods to hunt. And I don't know.
They stopped and talked.
Yeah, they stopped and talked.
Mm-hmm.
And he was Martin was with a buddy of his.
Mm-hmm.
And they were out hunting, correct?
Yes.
And when they were coming back, see, guys, I wish I knew the whole story. All I know,
can tell you,
yeah. If you know it, please tell me.
Well, I can tell you this. I can give you a little bits and pieces of it. But Martin Groves appeared on a documentary called American Werewolves. You can get that on Amazon, and you can hear him tell the story. And I've seen Martin in person tell the story. In fact, my husband, and I love my husband dearly. He is the coolest man on the planet, but he always he's very skeptical about what I do.
Yeah.
And he'll never call me crazy for it. But I no longer drag him to these conferences and things that I go to because bless his heart, it's hard for him to deal with this. But he was at the conference that I was at in Paris, Tennessee, that Martin was speaking at. And he listened to Martin's story. And on our way home, that's all my husband talked about something happened to that man. You could tell by he had a hard time telling the story without trembling. And it was clear that this man had been through a really traumatic thing. But this is the story. In the southern part of the LBL, there is, it's on the, whatever the Western Lake is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's Kentucky Lake.
I think so.
There is a segment that's known as the Devil's Backbone. And it is just like the rest of the LBL. Anybody that's ever been there, there's no such thing as forest grooming on the LBL. It's all very rugged. It's all overgrown. It's, there's patches that they keep open for camping and things like that. But the LBL is a pretty rough and wild place, and the Devil's Backbone is no different. And that's where he liked to hunt. And I'm not even sure. The Devil's Backbone may be so far south that it might be in the Tennessee half of the LBL. I'm not sure. But, and so they went there and they set up camp that night, and they went out and sort of scouted the area, figured out who was going to hunt where. And when I don't have, I have a picture of what I believe is a Gugway that I can't show it because it's not mine to show. I have a couple of people send me pictures, and they ask me to be, not to show them. I have a folder full of those, but none of my own. I have actually only had one time when I thought I may have seen a Dogman, and I have come to believe that I saw a shadow because it was just too black. It was just like black. But anyway, so Martin and his buddy, they went out, and they it wasn't Daryl that he was with, was it? I couldn't hear you. But anyway.
No, it wasn't Daryl.
Okay. So they went out, they did their scouting, they set up camp, they camped for the night. While Martin was out looking at his area, he happened to come across this man who was bow hunting. And they stopped and they had a few words. He saw the man get out of his truck. He knew what the man's truck looked like. He knew what the man looked like, and they kind of went their own ways. Martin thought that he was being paced. He could not figure out what this animal was or if it was a person or whatever. He kind of at one point thought it might have been the bow hunter, but he actually felt like he was being followed. And so they went, and I believe that they camped overnight, and they got up early the next morning and they went out hunting. And while they were out there hunting, Martin, boy, I hope I'm getting this right. I do not take my version of the story as law, because I 100% I'm doing this from memory, and my memory sucks these days. But he happened to be that he goes out, he gets really uncomfortable, and he has something that starts throwing things at him. And most people would say that it's an indicator of Bigfoot. I think that he dealt with both that day. I think that he was dealing with both Bigfoot and Dogman. And as he got to the point where he went to look for his buddy who was camping with him or hunting with him, and the buddy was coming to find him, and they both kind of accused the other of trying to, play a practical joke, and it got more and more intense, and they were both really beginning to get afraid, and to the point that the buddy turned and started firing into the woods. At this point, they get back to their camp. They're trying to load up. They just want to get the hell out of there. Martin ends up in the back end in the bed of the truck. The buddy's driving the truck. They're trying to just get the hell out of there. And when they get up to the trace, runs the whole length of the LBL from south to north. It's got a full name, but I only call it the trace in my head because that's what everybody knows it as. Anyway, they get up to the trace, and there's police cars, and there's an ambulance. And now these guys feel like they've just escaped something that's chased them out of the woods to the point that they thought they were going to die. And there's an ambulance taking out a body bag because somebody did die. And they see the truck that belonged to the bow hunter being hauled away by a truck, that comes and gets vehicles. I hate my brain. I really am beginning to hate my brain. Anyway, that's as much as I know about Martin's story. I highly recommend that you go to Amazon. I think it'll probably cost you a couple of dollars to get the movie. I don't know if you can see it for free on there. It's called American Werewolves. Watch it, because his story alone makes it worth watching that whole thing. Nancy. And absolutely off the charts amazing. Watch the details that he remembers. Now, since that day, Martin has also had another encounter that he went there. And in his second book, he recounts that. I've not heard that encounter yet. I don't know what that one is, but I know Martin's been awfully sick. And the last time I saw him was at the LBL about 1.5 years ago. Well, March of last year. So a year and a few months ago. And there was just so many people around. And I know at one point he did tell his story. I didn't get to hear it. We were there. It was either the end of March or the beginning of April, but it was right around that time of year. They have a meet and greet there. And I usually try to go to it when they have it at the LBL. That last fall they had it down in Alabama and I didn't get to go, but and I don't think they had it at all this spring. Anyway, I happen to be, I'm always, when I go, they always want me to sit down and tell my stories. And, and I try to be overly animated and really interest people when I'm telling the stories. And so, but I happened to be done with my story and I got up and I walked around because I have really bad legs and hips and I have to get up and move periodically. And I happened to catch two people talking, and I think one of them might have been Wendell, but they were talking about how they had gone down to the Devil's Backbone, and they had parked along the side of the road, and it was the two men and their wives. Couldn't have been Wendell. Anyway, the two men and their wives, and the girls stayed in the vehicle, but the two guys got out and they walked down to the creek. And when they were coming back, they felt very uncomfortable. They felt like something was watching them or possibly pacing them. And which, again, when you hear pacing and rock throwing, immediately you think Bigfoot. But this is the southern half of the LBL, and that tends to be more Dogman than Bigfoot. Whereas the north end, no, I take it back. The south end is more Bigfoot. So I don't know. Anyway, so they get back up to the truck. And their wives point over where there's another truck parked. And they said, there was a couple that got out of that truck with their kid and they just went walking. Now this is dusk. It's getting dark. And by the time the guys got back up to their truck, it was after dark. And the wives said they didn't see them carrying any type of weapons, which are technically, I don't think you're supposed to have weapons in the LBL, but that's crazy not to. And so the wives went, they said, we haven't seen them come back. So they sat in the truck and they watched for quite a while, hoping that they would come back, and they never did. And they came back up and they were talking about it around the campfire. And like I said, I'm walking around the campfire, so I was hearing bits and pieces of the story. So anyway, I had to go home that night. And when you live as close as I do, and you don't like sleeping on cots and in tents, then you go home at night. And the next morning when I got back, the DNR had been there, and they had reported this family missing, and they did a search party. Now, I don't know if they found them, because I've never heard anything beyond that. Bits and pieces. I've heard a few people tell me, yes, they were found. I've heard other people say, no, they never did find them. But that's how things happen in the LBL. People just when the big tornadoes came through here, it was a 4-state tornado. It hit Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, and Kentucky. And it was on the ground for hundreds of miles. And it took out a lot of people in poor neighborhoods in Kentucky who had no place else to go. They had no insurance. Their homes were gone. They got tents and they went and they started camping in the LBL. You can go all over the LBL now and find torn up campsites.
Yep.
That's how crazy it is there. I could name all kinds of cryptids, Ray. I can name not deer, hide behinds, woods devils, devil monkeys. Of course, the obvious ones, the Jersey Devil, Mothman, gargoyles is one that I really have an interest in. Giant spiders is a really fascinating one in particular. Are you don't like spider? See, that's why it's so fascinating to me, because I am an absolute arachnophobe. Like
so
I freak out when a spider's in the room with me.
So someone asked if you like, and you answered if you had a picture of Dogman.
Yeah.
I have one, and I got to try to dig it out, and I'm gonna add it to my media assets.
Yeah.
But I have something that DA sent me. That DA Roberts sent me.
It's not from Ray Bold, is it?
I don't think so. This is from when
they went last spring.
No. From what I understand, this was captured on a Ring camera.
Oh.
So, and it's an audio.
Wow.
So everybody buckle up, because I'm going to play this audio that DA Roberts sent me last week.
Here we go.
That, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to freak you out, but that.
No, I didn't know that was that one.
Oh, have you heard that one? I truly apologize for that. I did not.
No, it's okay. It's not your fault. No. Oh.
That's the first time I've played that. And I will not play it again when you're around. I promise.
Oh Lord, I don't know. I plugged my ears
as
soon as I started hearing, because it sounded like it could be a different one. But
well, the
let
guy
me tell you what happened to us here.
Okay.
Like I said, I may not have been obvious about it, but yes, Wade, that's the one. In 2023, we had a hot spell here, and it knocked the power out.
Yeah.
And it was about, I don't know, 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and we were just sweating bullets. And we don't have screens on our windows, so we couldn't really open the windows to get a fresh air. And about 1 o'clock in the morning, I finally rolled over, and my husband was sitting up in the bed, and he says, I've got to go sit outside. I can't take this anymore. And I said, okay, I'll be out there in a minute. And he went outside, and I threw on some clothes, and I came out. And when I got outside, every dog in our neighborhood was just going bonkers, just howling. And that happens. They do it all the time. It's not like it's unusual. And I said, as I came out there, I said, how long have they been doing that? He says, it's about 30 seconds before you came outside. And so I sat down in my chair, and you could kind of hear coyotes behind the dogs. And I think that's what sets the dogs off, is the coyotes come through and they start yipping, and that makes the dogs bark and howl. And but there was something else I could hear. I could hear it behind all of that. And then it just grew. I mean, it was like it was growing and coming at us at the same time. And I can remember it came from off over to our left. And it was just this sound like what you just played. And it was coming at us so quickly. And I suddenly had this feeling in my chest. And I looked at my husband and I said, we have to go inside now. And to his credit, he did not question me.
Yeah.
We got up and we went in the house. And when we closed the door, he said, what was that? And I said, I don't know, but I know if we'd sat out there, we would have died. I just knew that what I heard, it was not a normal animal, and it was coming right at us, and it howled as it came, and it just got increasingly louder. And when that door shut, it stopped.
That's crazy. I'm getting a little anxiety in my chest just hearing that story. I will tell you that this was taken not too long ago.
Okay, that's not the one.
Yeah, this was taken not too long ago, and it was like the guy captured this. He said it was like 5 blocks from his house where he believes it originated from.
That's about, I think, how far? Well, I don't know if I would say 5 blocks. I would say it was probably about between 1/8 and 1/4 of a mile from us when it started. But I plugged my ears immediately when it started to play because you said the ring cam, and that's when I thought, oh Lord. So I probably should have listened to it, but I was afraid it was that one, and I can't hear that without losing my mind because it was
I'd like to play it for Kristen, so you want to plug your ears or just mute me?
No, this is not the same one. Believe me, it's the one I thought it was has a very unique sound. So you can go ahead and play it. I know it's not going to be the one.
Okay. Kristen, here it comes. Anybody has any dogs? Because apparently a couple people's dogs reacted to it. So here we go.
Here we go.
Yeah, that's not it. That's got too much echo in it.
Yeah, that is crazy. Now, where I live, there's Doug Hychek has had a couple of encounters, and a couple of people that he knows that I've met have had sightings of Sasquatch. And again, guys, that's not. I'm just gonna say that's not Sasquatch. That's a Dogman. That's what they're believing it to be, a Dogman howl. But the sightings, because you said you've had it close to your area. Doug Hychek lives 20 minutes from me, and the areas that he had his encounter and the people that he knows that I've met also have their encounter. I know that area.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, it wasn't super, 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 cold. It was fall. And so we had a bunch of leaves on the ground, and my wife and I would like to sleep with our window open during the fall. We're on the second floor, and I hear this crunching coming through the window, like someone's walking through our backyard. And it was a really weird, it didn't sound like a 4-legged animal. And I'm like, what the heck? So I grabbed my buddy Sig, and I grabbed my tack light, and I slowly moved the curtain open a little bit, and I flashed around, and I'll be dang, you know what I saw?
What?
A freaking possum. It was but it didn't sound like it was a possum, and it scared the snot out of me, and I'm like, are you kidding me? And my wife goes, what was that? I go, it was a possum. But it did not sound like a possum moving through the leaves.
They sound a lot bigger than they are sometimes.
And I'm like, what was that?
I want to share my possum story.
Hear a voice in Dogman encounters. So, Kristen, I don't know. Like, I think I've heard a couple people say they've heard what they described as mind speak. When it comes to having some type of encounter with a Dogman. But I don't know if I've ever heard like any vocalizations like you would hear like the samurai chatter, which I just so happen to have in my assets. that Mr. Ron Moore sent to me from his personal library. What do you think about that? Do you think that they have maybe some type of vocalizations other than a howl or a growl?
Yes. Yes. I think they all do. I think the dog, I think that whatever was coming at us that night was telling whatever was with it, I'm bringing dinner home.
No, I do not want to hear that.
Tonight, it's coming from me. But in my own encounter, and I won't go into detail because you're going to release that on the 11th, but in my own encounter, I heard something that was not samurai chatter, and it was not a howl or a scream or anything like that. And my encounter was with a Bigfoot. And so I am absolutely certain that whatever it was saying was different. I've heard samurai chatter. I've heard Ron Moorhead's samurai chatter audios. I'm telling you, it was not samurai chatter. That said, I have heard one other time a person played something on a show once, and I went, "Oh, that's it." And again, the guy was saying, "This isn't samurai chatter. It's something entirely different." What I will tell you is this: they ain't talking to me. If you hear two of them, or if you hear one talking, there's another one there. It's telling its story to, not me.
Yeah.
And so if you hear them talking 9 times out of 10, 199 times out of 100, maybe 999 times out of 1,000, you're not dealing with one. You're dealing with two or more.
Yeah. Now, have you ever heard the chatter that Ron captured where it was a male and a female giving each other the business and to believe that the female wins the argument? Have you heard that samurai chatter? I have
heard that, yeah.
Let me see if this is it. Let's see here. I'm going to have to rename these because I got so much. I think this is it. You guys stand by. Boy, I'll tell you right now, that guy lost that argument. She gave him the business.
I've heard that one before.
Oh my goodness. Every time I hear that, I just start giggling because at first I didn't know what I was listening to, just some chatter. And then Ron described what he had seen prior to that audio being captured. And I was like, whoa, okay. All right. Domestic disturbance, boy. Well, I don't know why at the end, but I thought she was saying gobble, gobble, gobble. So did I. So did I. But the one part that really gets me kind of sends a little shiver up my back is when you hear it go, ooh, does that noise. And I'm like, what? I don't know why, but it just kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies. So, but yeah.
It gives me the heebie-jeebies to be out in the woods and hear that no matter what.
Oh, I already told Daryl. I don't know if Daryl's still in the chat. I know Daryl was in earlier, but he's invited me and Josh to go out to Owl Moon Labs and do some photography and some filming out there. And I told him I want to stay overnight in the actual area that everything's kicking off. And he told me I'm a brave man, but I don't know. Another one of my bucket lists is I want to cast a print. That's what I want to do. I want to cast a print. I want to be able to look on my wall on a shelf and have an actual print that I casted. That's something that I've always wanted to do. I want to do maybe find like a hand print and take pictures of a hand print and put that up there and just stuff. But, I'm really excited. I'm just going to go ahead and do a little break in the storytelling. I got one I want to tell. It's about 2.5 hours from my house. Where I've been to quite a few times, and I love that area. But I just want to say, you guys, thank you so much. I don't know, everybody saw it in the chat, but I've hit 3,001 subscribers, well ahead of my goal for the end of June. So thank you very, very much. For that, you guys. I truly appreciate it. And next month, one weekend in July, I'm not sure when I'm going to do it, but I'm actually going to go out to Elkhorn, Wisconsin. I've talked my daughter into going with me. Maggie Johnson, my co-host, and I think her husband are going to tag along. And we had a gentleman in Josh's chat. His name is Microphone something. It's a really, really cool guy. He lives right near there as well, and he wants to meet up. So I think we have a little contingent of people out there. And I'm just going to bring my camera and have my daughter video and things like that. So I just want to bring that to you guys as well. And it just experience, because here this is a cool thing. This is a well documented area, and I'm going to reach out to Lee Hample to see if he wouldn't mind meeting us at his farm and kind of give us a tour, because he's had 3 sightings of the Beast of Bray Road that he believes to be the Beast of Bray Road on his property.
I've been on Bray Road.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm really excited. So yeah.
I didn't realize when I was there that's where I was.
Yeah. You told me that story. That was great.
Yeah. I was lost, and so I was standing there on Bray Road with a flashlight and a map spread across the hood of my car, back to the woods. Yeah, I had no idea.
Of all roads, roads.
It's crazy, but because actually, Ray, I'm trying to work up a story on crawlers. I've been researching them. I just never gotten enough information yet to really put one together, but I eventually hope to. But the way it is I thought I'm not afraid of very many things, but the things I am afraid of, I'm terrified of. Spiders, the dark, and heavy traffic terrify me. And where I lived in Illinois most of my life, it was cheaper to drive to Chicago and put somebody on a plane at Chicago O'Hare than it was to fly out of our own Quad City airport. And that meant often I would be coming back across Illinois as most people were leaving work or going to work ended. Anyway, I'd often get caught in really heavy traffic going back across Illinois to my hometown. And I know that there is a road, and I believe it's 120, that actually I could get on that highway. Takes longer, but not nearly as much traffic. It's a much more deserted highway. Highway 12 is not Highway 120. Highway 12 takes you to Elkhorn. And I turned off, and because I was looking for a place. If I turned left, I'd have gone right into Elkhorn and it would have been fine. But I didn't. I turned right, and I was looking for a place to pull over, because back then, you didn't have a phone with a map on it. You had a big map you had to unfold. And I decided to get out of my car and unfold it. And the only reason I remember the name of the road is because I worked for a man whose last name was Bray. And so about 10 years later, I'm watching some show on History Channel or, something like that. I don't remember. And they're talking about the Beast of Bray Road. And I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. Where's that? Where? Oh my gosh, Elkhorn. And I had been there and driven down that road quite a ways.
That's crazy.
There on the side of the road with my back to the woods.
That I can't believe you did that. But you guys, I'm going to read the story, and it's Bigfoot of Two Harbors. Now, Two Harbors is a little north of Duluth, Minnesota. It is an absolutely beautiful, beautiful area up there. It's right on the shore of Lake Superior, and it is just stunning. It's one of my favorite places to go. So this happened in Two Harbors, Minnesota, February of 1972. It was President's Day weekend, and Carrie Peterson was excited about getting an extra day off from school. A 3-day weekend in northern Minnesota in February meant more time to snowmobile. With the sun shining brightly, it was a perfect winter day for being outside, cruising across the trails that bordered the small town of Two Harbors. With about 24 inches of snow and drifts that were higher than in some places, thanks to a recent blizzard, there was lots of great places to take a snowmobile. The Peterson family owned 2 of them. Carrie bypassed the powerful Arctic cat, his father's pride and joy, for a smaller Ski-Doo. It had more wear and tear, so that was the one the kids usually rode. To make the most of his day, Carrie decided to go back to a place he'd found by accident a few weeks earlier. The area was several miles north of town and was only accessible by riding on a secluded, secret trail for quite some distance. Carrie drove the snowmobile up the trail and got off his sled. The combination of the snow and the flat, unused trail meant the snowmobile could fly effortlessly over the powdered ground. No matter the terrain or the trees on either side, he had a straight, smooth ride. He headed north for about 6 miles until he reached the hidden fields. The land was flat terrain for as far as he could see. He stopped there to check his fuel, wanting to make sure that he still had enough to make it back home. A short while later, he decided that it was time to head back home. Finding the trail again, Carrie began to make his way towards Two Harbors. After about 15 minutes, he entered an area of thick woods on both sides, but his open path ensured him safe passage between the heavy brush. It also gave him a perfect vantage point to see a large figure emerging from the woods. Carrie thought that it was strange to see anyone out in the middle of nowhere, yet someone or something walked onto the trail, pushing aside the deep snow like it was nothing. The shape was one color. What? The shape was one color from head to toe. It was brown, like a chocolate Labrador retriever. Curious, Carrie slowed the snowmobile to figure out who or what it was that he was looking at. He wondered if perhaps it was a lost hiker or a snowshoer, but why would anyone be out here, walking through this deep of snow? As he got closer, Carrie saw that the face was a lighter brown around the eyes, nose, and mouth. The figure was really tall, taller than anyone Carrie had ever seen. His part of the trail was too narrow. Carrie couldn't turn around without stopping his snowmobile and then dragging it around to face the other direction. He had no choice but to stay his course. Speeding closer and closer, he tried to think. He didn't know what the creature was or what it might be capable of doing. He flipped on his headlight on the snowmobile, hoping to scare it enough where it might think twice about approaching. Turning its head in Carrie's direction, the monster stopped and watched him for a moment, then crossed and disappeared into the woods again. Shaking with fear, Carrie sped full throttle all the way back to town, never again to return to that remote area in the woods. To this day, he can't say for sure what exactly it was he saw, but no matter how he tries to rationalize his encounter or explain it away, he keeps coming back to the one conclusion that he had crossed paths with a Bigfoot. Yeah. And that's like 2 hours from my house.
Wow.
So in this book that I'm reading from, it's Midwest stories. So it's got just stuff from everywhere. A lot of stuff from Minnesota. Like the very first story is a Wendigo that was in the late 1800s. They've got just so many things. Stuff from Iowa, Kentucky, Wisconsin. You talked about the infield horde on your episode. Yeah, that's in here. The melon heads, which I got a big laugh of. Just Momo in Louisiana, Missouri.
Missouri, yeah, Louisiana, Missouri. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
Momo, the Missouri swamp monster. It was the second cryptid. So the first cryptid that I knew about was Bigfoot, which I learned about by way of the Patterson Gimlin film. And then the next one, of course, I saw documentaries, but then the next one became the Fouke Monster. And then the second one that is not Bigfoot, didn't have the name Bigfoot, was Momo, the Missouri Swamp Monster. I had it in a book when I was a kid. And that I don't think that they ever called it the Missouri Swamp Monster anywhere but in that book.
Really?
But yeah.
Well,
but
Missouri. What do you know about Momo?
I know that there were some kids that were out playing in the back of their property, and they'd seen something, and they came running in the house, and they told their dad, and the dad went out looking for it, and he saw it too. And they had several encounters with it on their property over a period of months. And then other people around town began seeing it. But it was one of those things where, and this is why one of the main reasons why I fully believe that Bigfoot and all of the cryptids that fall under that umbrella are nomadic, because it just went away. And and it was years before anybody else ever had another encounter. It's not too far away from the Blue Man. I mean, that's another cryptid that is in Missouri, and I don't think that they're geographically that far apart. So I often wonder if maybe Missouri, the Momo might have been maybe a Blue Man.
Let me ask you this: do you have any stories about the Blue Man? Because you mentioned it.
Oh yeah, I can tell you a lot about the Blue Man. I actually have done an episode on my channel. I have to rearrange myself.
All right.
Legs are starting to. So what I can tell you about the Blue Man is back in 1865, there was a man named Old Sol Collins. And I believe the Blue Sol Collins, that was his name. And he was your rugged, living in the country by yourself, up in the cabin in the woods kind of guy. And it was late spring, late winter, early spring. There had been a late snowfall, dusted the ground, and he's out there hunting. And of course, he's seeing all kinds of tracks because he got this fresh powder of snow. He's seeing turkey tracks and deer tracks and rabbit tracks and squirrel tracks. And it's that time of year when, if you even have a garden, all of your garden supplies are already gone. You've been living off of meat probably for a couple of months, and that probably is coming short. And so he really needed to hunt and get out there. And so he was getting excited about all of this meat that he was seeing just everywhere around him, until he came across a pair of tracks that he did not understand. These tracks were bigger than any tracks he'd ever seen. They were not bear tracks. He knew that. And they were not any kind of animal he'd ever seen. They kind of looked like human tracks, but they were just so big. He couldn't imagine what they could have been. Well, Saul was kind of the curious type, so he decided he was going to go looking for this thing, and he started following the tracks. He followed those tracks all day long, and it was just about dusk when he finally caught up with the thing. And when he did, he kind of wished he hadn't done so, because the first thing this thing did is turn around and started rolling boulders down the hill at him, because it was sort of up on a ridge, and he was down in the valley sort of, and this thing's rolling these big boulders at him. He's dodging boulders. And, but he managed to, he starts running, and the next thing he knows, this thing has actually picked up a big, big rock and thrown it at him. He goes whipping past his head. Now he's done. He's absolutely done. He runs all the way, through the night, however long it took him. He got all the way back to his cabin. Next day he goes to town and he tells everybody, he says, I saw this man. He was like 7, 8 feet tall, 9 feet tall, I believe, 9 feet if he stood an inch. And he was just covered in short, curly black hair. And that hair was so black, it shone blue in the twilight. And he said the only thing that man had on was he had some fur, animal hides wrapped around his feet and around his loins. And that was it. And he said that man was so strong that he carried a 10-foot lance with him, and a club. And between that club and his ability to throw rocks, he said that man almost killed me, and he didn't even have a gun. Well, of course, this got everybody in town excited about this whole blue man thing. They wanted to know more about it. They wanted to know, is this really a man? Is this thing really out there? So, it became the talk of the town. And it wasn't long before one family and then another, they reported seeing it. Kids talked about being chased home from school by this big, hairy man that was taller than any man they'd ever seen, covered in just short, curly black hair. And the hair was so black that it shone blue, an iridescent blue in the light. And this thing, only wore a loincloth, and they just couldn't for the life of them imagine, what this thing was, but it chased them home from school. Farmers were complaining that livestock were going away. The farmer had a couple of shoats just disappear right out of his pen, and they found their bodies just tore to pieces and half eaten later. Another farmer, he was missing sheep, and same thing. They'd find bits and pieces of them. And this went on for a couple of weeks before the men finally decided to put together a posse and go hunt this thing down. They couldn't find it. And after that, nobody heard much about it for a long time. In fact, it kind of went into just the, myths and legends thing for about 16 years. Nobody heard anything more about it until one day this guy comes running into town and he said he'd seen the blue man. Not only had he seen the blue man, but he thinks he knows where its lair is. So he gathers up some people and they go out and they find this cave. And clearly something's been living in this cave, because back in the corner, there's a nest made out of dead leaves and twigs and dead grass and stuff. And something's been eating animals, because there's animal bones scattered all over the cave floor, but there was nothing in there. Now they watched this cave for several days, but not one time did they see anything go in or come out. And again, they never heard anything more. But over the years, every now and then, someone would come to town and they'd say, man, I heard it. It kept me up howling in the woods all night long. Or someone would come to town, they'd say, I'm missing a cow, or I'm missing some pigs or some sheep or whatever. And this went on for decades till there was these two brothers. And they lived way out by themselves alone. They were just about as backwoods as two people could be. And they had coon dogs, and they loved hunting their coon dogs. And so this December, and they were out there just training them. We weren't actually hunting that night. They were just training their dogs. They had some young ones. So they didn't have any guns with them. They just gone out by themselves. And they heard, you turn a coon dog loose and it howls. And then it bays, and then when it trees something, it makes a different sound.
Mm-hmm.
And they heard it, and they heard the dogs and the dog, but the dogs were like making weird noises besides it. They were kind of yelping and howling, and they thought, man, we don't think that those dogs have treed a raccoon. There's something else out there. So they go out there. It takes them a while to get to where the dogs were, but they get there and they look up in the tree, and sitting up in that tree is this man wearing nothing but a loincloth and some, made out of a hide, and some fur wrapped around his hide strips wrapped around his feet. And the one brother, he said, I'm going to go back to the house and get the gun. And the other one says, well, I'm going to stay here and try to talk this guy down out of this tree, because this man's clearly nuts. And so the one brother that stayed there, he did everything he could. He tried to convince the guy, it's warm back at the house. You come down out of that tree, I'll take you back to the house. We'll make you a nice warm meal, give you a nice bed to sleep, and give you some clothes to wear so you're not covered, just walking around in that loincloth. It's the middle of winter. You got to be freezing to death. And he said all that guy did was just grunt and growl at me like he was crazy, like some kind of a wild man. Well, the other brother got back with his gun, and he says, "Come on down. I know I got the gun. I'm not going to shoot you, but I got some food at the house." And they did everything they could to talk that blue man down out of that tree, but he would not come down. And all he did was growl and make grunting noises at him. Well, they didn't go to town right away. They didn't tell anybody about it right away because they live way out in the boondocks. They live way up in the hills, and they didn't have a car to drive to town. This was in the early 1930s. They didn't have a car to drive to town. And they weren't going to walk to town in the middle of the night. And they didn't want to, they weren't going to get the animals out and what they had to do. But when they did come to town, everybody asked them, "Why in the hell didn't you come get us last night? You had this thing treed. We've been trying to catch this thing for decades, since the 1800s. And they said, "Well, we just didn't feel like we needed to come to town, and it wasn't going to come down out of that tree anyway. And so we just decided we just let it go." And they did. And that was probably the last time anybody heard from it until about the mid-1960s, when they started having people reporting that it was howling and, stealing livestock again. Now, they say that the name, the Blue Man, either comes as a tribute to the first person ever to see him, which was Old Blue Saul Collins. They may have either named it the Blue Man because of him, or it could have been the fact that this black fur, this short curly black fur all over its body or hair, when the sun hit it, there you go. When the sun hit it, it would sort of be it was so black. My dad's hair was this black. My dad's hair was so black when the sun hit it, it was an iridescent blue sheen on it. And that may have been the other thing. I have often wondered, if it weren't for the fact that the thing was so tall, 9 feet tall if it stood an inch, is what Saul Collins said. I don't know if you're familiar with the Kentucky Fugate family. Have you ever heard of them?
Is that about where that one guy did this documentary on them? And they're all inbred?
And they're blue. They have blue.
Yep.
The most of the ones that are left they've mixed with other people again and are not blue. I think the last one that had blue skin actually passed away. But that was a real family who, especially by the 1930s and 40s, had lived up in the Kentucky hills so long and had inbred so long that this passive gene had literally turned their skin blue. And I have often wondered if maybe one of the Kentucky Fugates had migrated west. And the only thing that keeps me from thinking that might be the case is the fact that this thing was 9 feet tall, and that's just too tall to be a human.
Yeah.
But that's the Blue Man. So
I know I'm not the only one that's going to say this. I mean, I've been seeing it in chat all night long. I'm learning so many new things. like for real. You guys, she sent me like 2 emails with a list of stuff. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that. I've heard of that, but don't know anything about it, So I'm going to go ahead and read one more. You guys, we're coming up on 2 hours, and I don't want to take too much of Neoma's time. She's gracious enough to give me 2 hours and hang out with you guys for, that 2 hours. And I know a couple people already bounced out of the chat because they have church in the morning. Did you already do Werewolf Springs?
Oh, when that really, I told you, everybody loves it when I tell Werewolf Springs.
You know what? You can tell it again if you want to tell it again.
But it's in the. Remember, I told it for you when you interviewed me on last week or earlier this week. Do you really want me to ruin that?
I honestly, you're getting so much love in this chat everybody is like, I love Neoma. I can sit and listen to her all day long. So, you guys, listen up. If she tells this story, you have to promise me that you're going to check out the July 11th episode that I'm dropping, and it's going to be Neoma. It's going to be her episode. So, yeah, look what she went and did, Wyatt. So, yeah, you know what? I love that story. And listen, you've got so many people just wanting you to tell it. So please, would you please honor us with you telling that story?
I sure will.
And when I'm in Arkansas in August, Wyatt, yeah, I'm gonna slap you. No, I'm just kidding.
So Werewolf Springs is it's a place that's just a little west of where I live now. It's a place, Dixon, Illinois, or Illinois. I don't live in Illinois anymore. I live in Tennessee, Dixon, Tennessee. There's a park there called Montgomery Bell State Park, and it is a beautiful, beautiful, very well groomed, very well taken care of park. It's nothing like the LBL. The trails are wide and well groomed and managed, and it's easy to walk around in them. There's 3 lakes there. I believe one of them has a swimming beach. There's a community center there where you can have events. In fact, every October they actually have a Dogman or a Bigfoot, a cryptid festival. It is absolutely gorgeous. But with everything beautiful, there is always that little piece of venom, that little bit of scare. And Werewolf Springs is Montgomery Bell's little piece of scare. Now, the way the park is shaped is it kind of comes down, and at the bottom is where the spring is. And the real name of the spring is called Hall Spring, because that part of that park was once owned by the Hall family. It was the Hall family farm. And that spring sat on their farm. And there was a road that came down, and that road exists today. And I think it might be Highway 70 or 68. I'm not sure which, but it comes along, and it just comes right down along the bottom of that part of Montgomery Bell. And back then it would have bordered, and that road was around back when this started in the 1870s. It would have bordered that park. And there was a farmer, and he was coming from Dixon, and he was headed home to somewhere near Nashville. And he was just in his wagon. It was him and his servant. It was getting kind of late at night, but they were determined to go through the night and get home. It's Highway 70, all right. And so they're headed along, and they get just about to the southern tip of what would eventually become Montgomery Bell, right about where the Hall Spring is. And they started recognizing the fact that there was something in the woods that was going alongside of them. And they could not figure out what it was. So the farmer, he decides, well, we'll just go a little bit faster, because if this is what I think it is, somebody going to rob us, they're clearly on foot, because nobody could be riding a horse in those woods. They're too thick around here. So there's got to be somebody on foot. I'll just speed the horses up and we'll be fine. So he just kind of, or the horse is just a horse. So he get, the horse goes into a trot, but this thing in the woods keeps up with him. And that kind of scares him and the servant a little bit. That kind of puts them on their guard, because what could keep up with him at a trot? So they get the horse going at a full gallop and pulling this wagon. Now, this is a curvy road. They're having a hard time holding on, but this thing is clearly keeping right up with them in the woods. And now they're both in a full bore panic, and they do what probably is the dumbest thing either one of them could have done. They both jumped off that wagon. They rolled into the underbrush on each sides of that road. And the horse just went on by itself with the wagon. And as the farmer laid there on his side of the road and he's listening, he can hear his servant being attacked by whatever this thing is. And it is growling and snarling, and he can hear bones being crunched, and the servant's begging for mercy. Lord, it's killing me. It's tearing me apart. No! And it's just ripping him to pieces. And the farmer's laying there, and there's nothing he can do. Nothing he can do. He can only lay there and listen until finally he hears a sickening crunch. And the servant, he knows, is dead. Now, at this point, he doesn't know what to do. If he gets up and runs, is this thing going to chase after him too? If he continues to lay there, is this thing going to come and find him? He doesn't know what to do. And so, because he really didn't know what to do, he literally just laid there till the sun came up. As soon as the sun came up in the sky, he turns around and he runs all the way back to Dixon. And he finds the sheriff and he tells them, my servant has been killed. Something chased us. We jumped out of the wagon. I know that he's dead, but we've got to go find his body. I need your help. So off the sheriff goes and off this farmer goes. He takes a group of men with him and they search those entire woods and they cannot find hide nor hair of this servant or whatever attacked him. Well, as time passed, more and more people start reporting hearing things in the woods, strange howling, strange growling, things following them. And it becomes quite legendary to the point that they finally decide that they're going to put a posse together and they're going to find this thing. They're going to hunt it down and they're going to kill it. So a group of men, they take their guns and their lanterns and they take a goat and they go out to the spring, and there's a clearing there near the spring, and they stake this goat out and they all hide in the bushes all around this clearing watching this goat. Now it's a fairly cloudy night, but it's a full moon. So when the clouds are not over the moon, they can see the goat clearly in the clearing, but unfortunately the clouds will come across the moon. And when they did, it would go pitch black and they could hear the goat. And the goat was clearly frightened. And then the clouds would pass away from the moon and they would be able to see the goat. And the goat would be pulling at the rope and it was clearly upset. And then the clouds would come over the moon and they couldn't see anything, but they could hear the goat again. And they could hear something in the brush and it getting closer. And then the clouds came away from the moon and the goat was just totally panicked at this point. And then one more time, the clouds came over the moon and things went black. And when the clouds went away and the moon came out, there it was, this huge, monstrous looking creature. And it's got the goat in its hands and it's ripping its throat out with its teeth and it's just tearing apart this goat. And the men all pull up their guns and they just empty their guns into this thing. Bang, 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 bang. And then the moon goes behind the clouds one more time. And when the moon came out again, the creature was gone. The goat was gone. And 3 members of the posse were gone, never to be seen again. Time passed, more and more stories about the werewolf of Werewolf Springs, which is what it became known as, were passed around until one day a man who was a big game hunter, legendary, he'd killed rhinoceri and he had killed lions and he killed tigers and he'd hunted every big beast there was, and he was legendary for always getting his quarry. And so that was he came to Dixon, Illinois, and he told them, I'm going to hunt this thing down for you. I know I can catch it. I can kill it. I've got this big old buffalo rifle. It's not going to, nothing could survive this. So there was a cabin there by the spring, and he goes and he gets in the cabin. And for the first 4 days, he'd get up every morning and he'd walk all around the woods in there tracking, trying to find some kind of indicator of what he was hunting. And then he'd go home and take a nap, and then he'd sit up all night and he would watch out the window towards the spring to see if this thing would happen to come by. And sure enough, on the 4th day, he's watching out the window just after the sun had gone down, just about dusk. Here comes this thing walking along, and he pulls up his gun, takes aim, and fires. Now, he's pretty sure he hit it, but it didn't do anything. All it did was make that thing mad. And I mean, really mad. It came barreling towards that cabin so fast, he didn't hardly know what to do. And it was beating on that door till it just ripped that door right off. Fortunately, the big game hunter had managed to get all the way up into the rafters. And he was sitting up there when the thing came inside, but it's jumping up and it's trying to grab at him, and it can't get to him because he's high enough up, and he could just almost barely get around, just enough to every now and then he could get a shot off. This went on through the whole night. This thing tried everything it could to get to him all night long. And all night long, bullet after bullet had no effect on this beast. Until finally the man was left with 2 bullets. And he thought, I'm going to try one more time to kill this beast. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to use the last bullet on myself because I'm not going to let this thing tear me apart. And just as he was about to take aim and fire that gun at the beast one more time, the sun came up. The beast looked out the door and he saw that it was daylight and he took off running. Well, that big game hunter stayed up there for a couple hours to make sure it was broad daylight. When he climbed down, he packed up his stuff. He went to town and he says, I found the one animal I can't kill. I am out of here. I'm done. And he left. Again, time passed and stories get passed around and stuff. There was a story of a little girl who had been sent out to the spring to get a bucket of water. Now, I've seen the pictures of the spring. It doesn't look like water I would drink, but it is a spring, so what the heck. But she was sent out there with a bucket of water, and she didn't come back to the house. She was gone for quite a while, and finally the mom went out looking for her. She found the bucket, but the little girl was never seen again. Now, like I told you, there's 3 lakes in Montgomery Bell State Park, and one of them along the far southwestern edge, I believe, there's a bluff, and there's some small caves in those bluffs. And people have often gone up there and explored those caves, thinking that maybe that's where this werewolf of Werewolf Springs lives. And before it ever became a park, when it was all farmers that lived in that area, sometimes when they had livestock that died, they'd drag it up there and they'd leave them in the cave so that they wouldn't have to deal with the smell of decaying animals on the farm. And so when they go up there, they'd often find the skeletal remains of cows and horses and pigs and things that, died in they couldn't eat, but they needed to get rid of the bodies. And they figured, that's from the farmers. But what they couldn't explain was the inordinate amount of human bones that they found in those caves. And that is the story of the werewolf of Werewolf Springs. So there you go.
No.
To this day, people will go through that park. They'll come back from a hike through the park and they will say, something followed us back. Something paced us in the woods. To this day, people will report that.
Well, it's funny that you say that because we had a comment, and let me bring that up here real quick. I could find him here. Where are you at?
There you go. That's exactly what I hear all the time from people.
Yeah, I think I need to take a visit there.
You come down in October and participate in the cryptid conference.
Yeah, that sounds too awesome. Would, but wouldn't want to camp there. Pork chops and applesauce still in the house, everybody. Yeah, that's great. That is great. Neoma, I can't thank you enough for your time tonight. Thank you so much for, being here, telling your amazing story, sharing your wisdom with us, entertaining all of us. I had so much fun sitting here and, again, learning so many things. So, yeah. Do you have anything going on that you would like to let everybody know about?
Well, as a lot of people may know, I have had some medical issues that have kept me from putting up stories, but I do have one that I hope to release, if not by tomorrow, at least by Monday evening. I'm still editing. It's just, I decided, since I had my notes on the infield horror, I went ahead and did a video on that, and I revisited the Big Muddy Monster because they are so close to each other and so similar. I'd done the Big Muddy Monster before, but I felt like it was important to revisit it before I told Infield Horror. I of course have my my book that's always available on Amazon. It's probably not the best I've ever done, but I have a collection of short stories that I am trying to get. I need to really work on getting it formatted so I can get that out there. I don't think I'm doing any conferences until October. The end of October, I'm doing a Ohio Bigfoot conference in Greenville, Ohio. Oh gosh, it's not Greenville. She moved it to the next town over, and I can't remember the name of the town. But if you look for the fairgrounds in Ohio that has the giant Bigfoot statue in front of it, that's where it's going to be. And I believe that's the second to last weekend, or maybe the last weekend in October. Hey Wyatt, I just sent a story to.
That. Don't answer him. Don't answer him because he knows. He knows the answer to that question.
I actually just sent one to him a couple of weeks ago, and he hasn't put it up yet. But yeah, my best stories you're going to find on. I always send my best ones to Cam because he does such an amazing job narrating them, so much better than anything that I could do. And my channel, I do have a few of like The Pit is a fictional story on my channel that I wrote. But I am more interested in, well, just like the story of Werewolf Springs, folklore. Every small town in America has something, and I'm not going to stop till I know them all. And I'm like you, all of these odd. I keep meaning to tell you, I actually did have a not deer experience years ago. Oddly, not too far from where I had my Bigfoot encounter.
Okay.
Like down the road.
I'm not familiar with you said not deer?
A
like
not deer. Notdeer. A not deer.
Okay. Educate me.
A not deer looks like a deer. I mean, but how it gets its name is you'll see a big deer and you'll think, wow, that is a huge deer. And then you'll look hard at it and you'll think, that's not a deer. What's wrong with that deer? Its legs aren't right. But the creepiest part about a not deer is, as we all know, anybody who hunts at least knows that predators have two eyes that look forward.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, I think, 190 just beyond our peripheral. But prey animals have eyes that are more to the side of their head, and they have 270 degrees of vision. What that means is that generally you can see one side of one eye on a deer or the other, or you can see one eye and part of another, but you really can't see both eyes at the same time. But a not deer has the eyes of a predator.
Really?
And yes, and they are known to be aggressive. And when I was living in that same cabin where I had my Bigfoot encounter, I was coming home one night and I saw the biggest deer I've ever seen in my life. And I kept thinking to myself, that doesn't look right. And I remember getting home and telling my husband, I saw the biggest deer. And it really blew me away when I caught its eyes in the headlights. And he says, eyes? And I said, well, yeah. He says, well, that's unusual. You don't usually catch two eyes in that. And I was like, it was looking right at me. I was seeing both full eyes. And he said, that's not possible. And that's right. Cam is very good people. He's one of the best people I know. But anyway, and I remember thinking it was walking weird, because they have more joints in their legs than a regular deer does. They have sort of a weird, awkward gait. And it wasn't until many, 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 many years later that I realized what I saw that night was a not deer, and not a regular deer at all. And it's so, but they're more commonly seen down here around Tennessee, Kentucky, and the Carolinas. People talk about not deer. more in this area than they do anywhere else in the country, although I think there have been sightings of them everywhere. But they're not a well-known cryptid at all. It's like it's not really like, for instance, a hide behind is more of a regional cryptid. You're going to find hide behinds up in Vermont and, maybe New Hampshire. Same with woods devils. You're going to find them, or weejucks. You're going to find those all up in New England. Not deer seems to be all over the place, but they're just not. I live not too far from Nashville. They're just not well known. For one thing, when people see them like I did, they don't really realize that they're just thinking that's a weird looking deer. It's the hunters that get chased out of the woods by them that know that they're aggressive.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I go hunting again and I'm up in my stand and I see a deer with eyes facing forward. I'm shooting it. I will unload everything I have. My sidearm, my shotgun, I'm going all A-team on them, seriously. Now, there's a question here. Have you ever heard Valt's Dogman story? It's crazy scary.
I have not.
Yeah, I don't know what Valt's is, so.
The Vault Keeper, I think, is who that is.
Mm.
And I have not heard the story. I think that I have developed in recent years a really deep-seated interest in Dogman, but I don't have a library of Dogman stories like I do Bigfoot, or because for the longest time, I don't want Dogman to exist. I'm sorry. I don't want Dogman to exist. And I can't wrap my mind around the concept that there is a werewolf out there in the woods that's real. That was always the one, and the one monster in all of the monster movies that scared me most was a werewolf. And in my mind, that's what a Dogman is. And I don't want it to exist. And so for the longest time, I sort of tried not to get too interested in Dogman, but it's such a fascinating story. I can't help myself. Such an odd, crazy creature. Same with Gugway. I mean, do you really want Gugway to exist?
No, but I definitely want to know more about him. So I'm definitely going to, go out there and search and see more, because you're not the first person that's brought it up. I think Wyatt's brought it up to me. And so you guys, let's real quick. Someone sent me a picture. I guess this is a depiction of a knot deer.
There you go.
Is that seriously like a depiction of one for real?
I've seen that as a representation. I think that it's not too far from what I saw. It almost what I remember that night about what I saw was it was almost like it had the head of a coyote, and that's what that looks like to me. Almost like this part is the head of a coyote.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you right now. I see something like that. I'm just gonna blast it. I
And they apparently growl. That's the other thing.
It's gonna start crying when I'm putting 1.5 ounce lead slugs down at them. So,
Yeah.
Someone asked what's the difference from Sasquatch? Like
Of a Gugway?
Yeah, Chris, is that what you're referring to? The difference between a Gugway and a Sasquatch?
I don't know if a Sasquatch and a Dogman are two completely different things.
Yeah,
It seems like a Gugway would be somewhere in the middle between them. Like the two that I know that are the most aggressive are Dogman and Janosquas. I'm sorry, Gugway and Janosquas. And I know that Dogman is far more aggressive than Bigfoot, but I think that they come closer to being more on the Dogman's, not the Janosqua. The Janosqua is definitely a Sasquatch. It's a subspecies of Sasquatch. It looks like a Sasquatch. I think the Gugway probably is closer to being a type of Dogman. But a lot of people think that Dogman is just a type of Bigfoot. I don't know if you've ever seen the 10 types of Bigfoot pictures and the 10 types of Dogman, and
I've been looking for stuff like that because I like to like print up, like an 11 by 14 like poster and then frame it and hang it on my wall. So
let me see if I can pull one up and
I'm telling you, you are just you've got everybody in the chat just thinking, and I'm hearing so many things in here. Let's see here. I got Kristen, she's saying no. The not deer, I hear that it's like a deer that turns into a rake. Never heard that before, but again, I don't dispute anything. Werewolves and dogmen are separate. I believe that because my dad saw a werewolf right before he was either going to basic training or heading out to Vietnam back in the 60s when he lived up in Ketchikan, Alaska. What else did I see up here? Charlie, you mentioned the Vault. Look up Vault of Nightmares. His channel is still around. It's okay. Vault of Nightmares. So if anybody wants to hear about that Dogman story, look up Vault of Nightmares. And is that on YouTube? And if it's on YouTube, check it out.
Yeah, I think it is. Do you remember a man named Brenton Son?
I've recently heard that name, but I don't know anything about it.
He had the best Dogman encounter channel I've ever encountered. Unfortunately, around 2000 and maybe 17 or 18, he was diagnosed with cancer and died. And it was one of those things where he was diagnosed one week and died the next. It was that fast. I don't know what happened to his channel. I think his family just took it down. And it's really sad because he had some of the best encounters I have ever heard on his channel. And his name was Brenton Son.
Hillary's saying it's still up.
Really? I've looked for it.
How do you spell his name, or how do you spell his channel?
I think it was Brenton, BRENTON maybe, and then SAW, either EN or IN. It's one oh my gosh, some of the stories some of them were kind of outlandish, but my favorites were the Kentucky moonshiner stories.
Really?
And, oh my gosh, he just told the most amazing stories on his channel. It had an unbelievable collection of encounters that people would send him, and he would read them or he would interview. He'd go back and forth between the two. And and boy, was he ever good. I so enjoyed him, but I didn't realize I had looked and couldn't find his channel. I'm glad to see it's up because I definitely miss being able to hear his stories. I wish he hadn't passed away.
Now, is the name of his channel, is it called Brenton Son's
Mysteries to Search?
Mysteries to Search, or is it just Mysteries to Search?
I think it's Mysteries to Search. Oh, no, okay. I think his name was, I don't know. That's a good question.
Hillary, can you confirm? Matt Squatch? What do y'all talk about Matt Squatch? I haven't seen
is Matt Squatch still around?
I don't know what Matt Squatch is. I know I just recently heard of Sheep Squatch, Bat Squatch, And again, I'm like, come on now. And apparently, bat squatch is big up in Washington State.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Interestingly, so I mean, I think I may have told you my silly goat foot story.
Nope.
Maybe. I had gone to my son, both of my sons are military men, and I had gone to my son's basics graduation in Jackson, Fort. It's in South Carolina. I can't remember the name of the fort. I can't remember the name of my kid half the time. Anyway, and a friend of mine went with, and I had said, when we got there, I really, really, really wanted to go out at night and just kind of do a cursory drive around the area because I would like to see if I could run into Goatfoot. And she just thought that was hilarious, but she'd been my friend for years. I dragged her out in the woods more times than she cared to remember. And so we drove around and I was telling her all the stories that I knew about Goatfoot. And this is my brain, how my brain does not function like a normal human being's brain. And we went back home disappointed. We never saw anything. And we never got out of the car, for one thing. But we did drive around some back roads and probably should have been shot by the locals, but weren't, thank God. And I was laying in bed at the hotel, and it suddenly occurred to me, it's not Goatfoot, it's Lizard Man.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't even ever looking for the right thing. So I created my own cryptid, Goatfoot. But I mean, there is a Goat Man in Texas, which is a cryptid. There's, there's the Alabama white thing. There's the critter of Carr Creek that's right here in Robertson County where I live. There's, gosh, I don't know. When I start thinking about it, I can name dozens. And then other days I come up with my own, like Goatfoot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Josh, during one of our lives, I think he called Bigfoot big man or the big guy or something like that. We got a laugh out of that. We thought it was pretty funny. So, but okay, you guys, we're going on almost 2.5 hours.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. I mean, I'm more concerned with your time. I don't want to be, disrespectful of your time and stingy.
You're fine. And believe me, you could have me on the show a dozen times, and I'll find a dozen different things to talk about. I'm the worst.
Okay, I'm going to look at your email and I'm going to try to find one last thing. Guys, one last thing, because this young lady needs to get to bed just like everybody else does. So hold on one second here. Let me find your... Okay. Oh, I just realized that you sent me an email with pictures.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I think one of them was the Beast of Seven Shoots.
Yes. You guys, I'm going to show that real quick. Holy smokes. How did I miss that? Boy, I'm just not a good person.
Can I share a screen?
I think you can, yeah.
Because I want to show you something real quick.
Sure.
It's a present button, right?
It's the what?
Present.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Share screen.
And I think you have to find your screen that you want to share.
Okay. Have you ever seen this?
All right, let me click that for you. Hold on a second here. No, I have not seen that.
Okay, those are considered the types of Dogman.
Okay, I'll tell you right now, that hyena looking thing, I do not want to see that. No, thank you. Absolutely not.
I believe, though, that it's the, I need to put my glasses on. It's either the hyena looking one or it's the type 3 variant 3, the one that kind of looks like a, I don't know what you would call that face, but those are the ones that, one of those two, and I'm not sure which, is considered to look the most like a Gugway. Now, the Beast of Seven Shoots is considered a Gugway. How do I get out of this?
Oh, I just remove it.
Okay. You can bring that up. I don't think it looks like any of those.
Yeah.
And it's considered a Gugway.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to bring it up in a second here. Get back here. I got to download it. Add overlay.
Baboon, that's the word I was looking for.
Okay, here is the Beast of Seven Shoots. Oh, man, you can see his snout right there. Holy smokes.
Mm-hmm. And that is, a lot of people say that's a Gugway. So I don't know that, most people or any of us even really know what a Gugway is.
That's crazy.
And it looks like it's got maybe a dog or maybe a baby pig. That's like the back end.
Yeah,
you
its
can
arms,
see the legs wrapped around the front of its hand.
That's bananas.
Mm-hmm. And the guy didn't even realize he was taking the picture. He did not find that in the picture till he got back. Because I believe that was on film and he had to develop it. And so, yeah, pretty crazy.
Man. Oh my gosh. That's not going to make me rethink my my trip out to go find Beast of Bray, a Bray Road out there in Elkhorn, Wisconsin.
Yeah. Stand outside your car with a map on the hood.
Why? When was that? When was that sighting of Gugway?
I'm sorry. I got, he said War Eagle. I love War Eagle State Park. It's one of my, there's this place in Arkansas called War Eagle. There's a mill there. I love that place. Anyway, what were you saying?
I was just asking why. When was this sighting?
I know that there's a story in conjunction with Blue Man about War Eagle.
Really?
Yeah, but so I think it's Peter Meadow, I think is what it's called. It's right there by the mill, not too far from the mill. There were a couple of kids that they'd been told that there was is it reopened yet? That's what I want to know, because I heard it was closed for a while, Wyatt. But anyway, they had heard that they were out riding their horses, and a farmer was coming up the road, and he stopped them and he told them, "Don't go down this hill. I just saw a monster down there. I don't know what it was, but I saw this monster." And the reason it's connected with the Blue Man, because the Blue Man and War Eagle's way over in the western side of Arkansas, northwest corner, almost all the way to Springdale.
That's where I'm gonna be in September. I mean, August.
Really?
Yeah, I'm gonna be near Bennington.
You need to Benton?
Bentonville.
Okay. You need to go to War Eagle while you're there, if you've got time, because just go there and have beans at the mill. But the farmer said, "Don't go down there. I just saw a monster down there." The War Eagle and where the Blue Man is, the Blue Man territory, are opposite sides of the Blue Man's up here on the eastern side of Missouri. And this has happened at War Eagle, which is on the western side of Arkansas. But the description was very similar. And so the kids are like, you tell a couple of teenage boys not to go somewhere because there's a monster. What are two teenage boys going to do? They're going to go see the monster. And so they're headed down the hill towards the bottom of this meadow where it flattens out before it gets to the river. And they see what they think is a hide laying there. Looks like an animal hide that's just been kind of tore up and laying there. And the closer they get like real close to it, and this thing stands up. And it's exactly... it's the monster. And of course they turn around and they ride their horses out of there. The one boy actually had evacuated his bowels in fear. And of course parents went looking for it and they didn't see anything. But that is a story that's supposed to be part of the Blue Man story. I don't usually include it. I think I did when I did the Blue Man story on my channel, but I don't usually include it because they're so far apart. They're different parts of two different states, and to me that's not that big of a deal because I believe that that they're nomadic, but a lot of people have been, well, Miss Neoma, why'd you include that story? That don't make no sense. And so rather than confuse people, I usually don't include it if I tell the story live. So,
that's crazy. That is absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
So, all right, you guys, for real. My son is in town with my granddaughter, and they're asleep right now. But tomorrow's going to be an early morning because I have a 1-year-old that probably gets up with the butt crack of dawn. So, I just want to say again, I know this is like the Minnesota or the Midwest goodbye, but Miss Neoma, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge and your stories. And I know you creeped a few people out because they were scared. I was on the edge of my seat on a couple of them. And
cool.
Yeah, I've got a list of
done.
I've got well, I'll tell you the site that you were talking about for Brenton, I can't pronounce his last name.
Gone.
It's there. I looked it up and I subscribed to it. The last thing that he that was posted to was a UFO story, and it was 5 years ago.
Yeah,
so
that would be about right.
But I'm definitely going to be listening to that. He had almost 60,000 subscribers.
Yeah,
and now I feel kind of cheated, because I didn't get a chance to enjoy his stories while he was around. But now, just like Eddie Van Halen said, when he passed away, I saw a meme and I think it might be photoshopped in there, but it's just very poignant because Eddie Van Halen was one of my favorite, was my favorite guitarist, is my favorite guitarist, but one of my overall favorite musicians. Freddie Mercury, my all-time favorite singer. They're not really gone. All you have to do is turn on the radio.
Yeah.
And they're still with you. So now I'm going to get a chance to experience Brenton's stories because I'm going to binge listen or binge watch his channel. So will you give us the name of your YouTube channel?
Neoma Finn, Open to Doubt. Because my stories are mostly true, but don't be afraid to doubt, just as long as you ask the questions.
All right, you guys heard it there. So if you guys want to check out some more of her stories, you've got two places that I know of. Neoma Finn, Open to Doubt, and Dixie Cryptids, because I assume she's a regular on there. And hopefully I won't get too stingy with your time, but I'd love to have you on some more.
Anytime. Absolutely anytime.
I'll just probably call it Story Time with Neoma. Because you are absolutely amazing. You are a gem and a treasure to this community, and I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. It means everything to me. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. All right, you guys, if you haven't subscribed to her channel or to Benton's channel, definitely check him out. You guys, if you're new and you haven't subscribed to mine, please take a listen and consider subscribing to mine. Thank you for all the likes, the shares. Big shout out to Racing 12. Thank you so much for the generosity that you show my channel, and also people when they come on by providing them with gifted subs. I truly appreciate it. Remember, you guys, I have a release on. I drop new episodes every Wednesday and Friday. Every Saturday is a live stream. You never know what we're going to talk about. I wish there was more that we could talk about on the Loveland Frogman, but there's just not a lot of stuff out there. And like I did this last Friday, if you guys aren't aware, I did a 2 for Friday. 2 for Friday is where I released 2 episodes on Friday. So go check out those. They're out, they're about, they're ready for you guys to enjoy. You will not be disappointed with either one. The first one that released at 1, I had Bigfoot Michigan Rob and his encounter, amazing. And then I had Miss Pat, Joe, and Bud, who are they just went out on an investigation, and you're not gonna believe what they captured on a thermal. And I have 4 clips of it in that episode, so you guys go check it out. Miss Neoma, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, you guys, that's the show for tonight. Thank you so much for spending a Saturday night with us. I truly appreciate everyone. And remember, you guys, like Josh always says, from Mysteries Unknown, stay prayed up. And as I always like to say, remember, you guys, a legend first begins with the sighting. You guys have a wonderful night. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you later.
I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?